In 1977, the road stretched out like a promise. A 20-year-old woman named Colleen Stan stood at the edge of a freeway in Eugene, Oregon, her thumb raised toward the sky. She was on her way to a friend's birthday party in Northern California, something casual, light, innocent. She'd hitchhiked plenty of times before. This wasn't new. In fact, she'd turned down 2 earlier rides that day. Something about the drivers had felt off. One man gave her a look that set her stomach turning. The other seemed nervous, jittery. Her gut screamed, no. But then a blue Dodge Colt pulled up. A clean-cut man with sandy hair and gentle eyes smiled at her. His wife sat in the passenger seat, a baby gurgling in the back seat. They looked normal, safe, even warm. That was her first mistake. Her last moment of freedom passed in a blink. The man behind the wheel was Cameron Hooker, a 23-year-old mill worker. His wife, Janice, was just 19. On the outside, they looked like any other young couple. A bit awkward maybe, but harmless. But behind their soft-spoken smiles was a secret twisted so deep it defied imagination. Cameron wasn't just a predator. He was a planner, a builder, a sadist. He had been fantasizing about owning a sex slave since high school. He read obscure bondage magazines and torture manuals obsessively, scribbling notes in the margins like a student preparing for an exam. And now he had found his victim. After some friendly chatter, they stopped at a gas station so Colleen could use the restroom. There, something stirred inside her, a voice, a primal urge. She looked at herself in the mirror and something felt off. The air seemed thicker, her hands trembled, her chest tightened. Run. Now. But she pushed it down, logic over instinct. Who would hurt her with a baby in the back seat? When she returned to the car, everything had shifted. A silence settled. The kind of silence that doesn't breathe. It hangs like a noose. Cameron drove into the woods under the guise of taking a scenic shortcut. Then, without warning, he pulled over. He reached beneath his seat and drew a knife, pressing the blade against her throat. Before she could scream, Janice handed him something wrapped in a blanket. A box. Not just any box, a homemade padded head box designed to fit tightly around a person's head, lined with carpet to muffle sound, with minimal ventilation. He slammed it over her skull and sealed it shut. Darkness, heat, suffocation. She couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't breathe. The world shrank to the size of her own panic. She was trapped in a soundless coffin of terror, where time stopped and identity shattered. Back at their home in Red Bluff, California, they dragged her down into the basement. Cameron got to work immediately. He stripped her naked, gagged her, blindfolded her, and suspended her from the ceiling by her wrists. Her toes barely grazed the floor. He whipped her until blood streamed down her back in narrow red rivulets. He didn't speak to her, didn't explain. This wasn't a moment of rage. It was ritual. And then he whispered a word into her ear. Slave. This wasn't about sex. This was about ownership, about erasing identity. Cameron wanted not just her body, but her mind, her will, her soul. And he was prepared to take it 1 inch at a time. Colleen's new home became a wooden box no larger than a coffin, hidden under Cameron and Janice's waterbed, 20 inches high, 3 feet wide, 6 feet long. She couldn't sit up, couldn't stretch her legs, couldn't shift without pain. The box was lined with a thin layer of insulation. There were tiny holes drilled into the sides for air. But in the California heat, the temperature inside soared past 100 degrees. Her sweat would pool beneath her. Her limbs would go numb. She sometimes lost all feeling in her fingers for days. Rats scratched at the walls around her. At first, she sobbed. Then she screamed. Then she prayed. Eventually, she stopped making any sound at all. Cameron would remove her only to torture her. He created elaborate contraptions, stocks, stretching racks, whips laced with metal tips. He suspended her from the ceiling like a slaughtered animal. He inserted electrodes into her body and shocked her until she convulsed. He burned her flesh with heated metal rods. Once, he forced her underwater in the bathtub. keeping her submerged until she flailed, gasping, just seconds from drowning. Other times, he'd let her out just to stand naked for hours, forbidden to move, her knees buckling, urine running down her legs. But the physical torture was only half of the plan. The psychological torment went far deeper. To keep her under control, Cameron invented the company, a powerful, invisible syndicate that bought and sold slaves. He told her the company was watching, listening, that they had spies in her hometown, that if she disobeyed, even once, they would kill her parents, her siblings, anyone she ever loved. He showed her fake letters, staged fake calls, and presented a forged contract where she had supposedly signed over her life and body. In her mind, escape meant death. Compliance became survival. Eventually, she stopped resisting. She began calling him master. She asked for permission to speak, to breathe, to eat. She was allowed to eat once a day. A plate of cold food slid through a gap in the box. When she was menstruating, she had to clean herself with old rags while chained. If she cried, he punished her. If she hesitated, he whipped her. After months of silence and darkness, the box became her reality. She lost track of the days. She hallucinated. She forgot the sound of birds, the feel of wind, the sight of stars. And yet, he let her out. Sometimes, he began to test his control. He allowed her to do chores, clean the house, take care of the baby. Once, in an act so surreal it's hard to comprehend, he let her go home to visit her parents. They posed as a couple. He told her exactly what to say. She smiled for photos, hugged her family, then got back in the car and returned to her box. Her family thought something was off. She was pale, thin, distant. But Colleen said she joined a religious group. She insisted she was fine, so they let her go. That's how complete her indoctrination was. By 1981, he even let her get a job as a motel maid. She earned money, spoke to people, slept in a box, and she never told a soul. Fear had become a prison more powerful than any wall or chain. But behind the scenes, Janice Hooker was starting to crack. She had once been Cameron's victim too. She had agreed to help him abduct a slave only under the condition he would stop abusing her. But over the years, watching Colleen suffer broke something inside her. She saw her own pain mirrored back, and it was unbearable. In 1984, Janice confided in a pastor. She told him everything: the head box, the contracts, the box beneath their bed. The pastor urged her to go to police. But first, Janice did something else. She told Colleen the truth. There was no company, no agents, no spies, no punishment squad waiting to kill her family. It was all a lie. Colleen's reaction? She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't run. She just sat, stunned, like a prisoner emerging from solitary confinement into the blinding light of the world. And then quietly, she left. She boarded a Greyhound bus, returned to her family, tried to rebuild her life from the ground up. And for months, she said nothing. That's how broken she was. She'd been trained to believe her pain didn't matter, that her voice had no power. It was Janice who finally went to the authorities. When police arrived at the Hooker residence, they were skeptical. But once they saw the evidence, the box, the restraints, the torture devices, the letters, the headgear, they were floored. One detective reportedly said it was the most shocking thing he had ever seen in his entire career. Even hardened investigators cried. In 1985, Cameron Hooker stood trial. Colleen took the stand. She told the world everything. How she counted hours by the drip of a pipe. How she sang to herself in the dark. How she wanted to die but didn't because even death felt like disobedience. She showed the brand burned into her skin, a letter C for Cameron. She was property, and yet she stood tall. Her voice did not shake. Cameron's defense? That Colleen had consented to it all, but no one bought it. He was convicted of multiple felonies: kidnapping, rape, false imprisonment, sexual assault, and sentenced to 104 years to life. He has been denied parole repeatedly. Most recently in 2022, he remains in prison to this day. Janice, In exchange for her testimony, was granted full immunity. She changed her name, remarried, and disappeared from public view. To this day, many believe she got away with complicity in one of the most disturbing crimes in American history. As for Colleen Stan, she survived. That word doesn't do her justice. She endured. She reclaimed her name, her voice, her life. She married, had a daughter, became a motivational speaker and advocate for abuse victims. But she never forgot the box, the darkness, the silence. Even years later, she would sometimes wake up gasping, heart racing, certain she was still inside. Her skin would crawl in small rooms. The smell of wood would bring back screams she was never allowed to make. The girl in the box. A story too strange for fiction, too real to ignore. Not just a tale of horror, but a testament to how the human spirit can survive even the most unthinkable nightmare.